We're making cupcakes, Tuxedo Cupcakes, chocolate cupcakes, vanilla frosting, a really cute topping, and I promise it's easy. When I started Savannah Cupcake, I promised myself that none of my recipes would be difficult. That was the only way that I was able to churn out hundreds and thousands of cupcakes like this, because the recipes are so easy. Now that I've mastered it, I get to share it with you, and you can do the same thing at home, but in much smaller portions if you want to, or double or triple the recipe if you want to do much more. Let me show you why it's so easy. There are just very few steps to doing this, and it starts with your ingredients. Flour, sugar, unsweetened cocoa powder, baking powder, baking soda, and salt. All of those ingredients you're gonna throw into your bowl and get those mixing and get them all beautiful. The next thing you do is you just put all your liquid ingredients together. Here I have canola oil, eggs, vanilla, and buttermilk. This is my homemade buttermilk, but if you don't feel like doing that, which it's really easy, but you can just go buy a container of buttermilk. I do have the recipe for buttermilk though here on Creating with Bambi, so you can find that, and it's easy. You just put the stuff in the container and let it sit for 15 minutes and you're done. Speaking of easy, let me show you how easy this is. Our dry ingredients are going to go into the mixer, and we're gonna let that go until they're all combined, and then they'll be done. Now we're on to our liquid ingredients, and I'm just gonna put everything in the container. So we have our canola oil. I'm gonna put in our 1 cup of buttermilk. You see it was kind of lumpy, trademark of buttermilk. I also have our eggs in, and our vanilla. One last step to the process is right here. You see this water? I'm gonna put in 1 cup of steaming water. It just finished boiling, and what this is gonna do, it's gonna let that chocolate and the sugar melt, and it's gonna make for a batter that is so delicious that it's drinkable. I know it's drinkable. I shouldn't know that it's drinkable, but I do. Anyway, we're gonna throw in this liquid here, our oil and buttermilk mixture, and then we're going to put in our hot water. Once you get the oil and buttermilk mixture combined with the dry ingredients, it takes less than 30 seconds. Give the bowl a good scrape, and then you're gonna add in that steaming hot water. The reason I like to do that separately is because the water is so hot that I do not want to scramble the eggs. Not good. So we're gonna let this go in the mixer for about 30 seconds. We'll give it a scrape, and then we'll go on to the next step. Lots of times when you see the batter from a cake recipe, you'll notice that it's fluffy. Not this one. This one is very, very runny, very liquidy, and check it out. Look at this. Remember I said it was drinkable? Well, it is that consistency. It's like a really thick hot chocolate. So think about it like that, like those fancy ones that you see sometimes. I can't use an ice cream scoop with this recipe because it's so drippy and so runny that it makes a big mess, and I can't stand it because then there's spots everywhere that baked onto my pans. When I first started making these, I thought I'll just use my liquid measuring cup and pour in that way because it has a little spout, like a pitcher type of thing, and it doesn't work. It makes such a mess because the batter and that little spout on there just don't work. This is the way to go because it's nice and flexible. This is what I use to make cupcakes for Savannah Cupcake for this recipe in particular. So if I'm using full-size cupcakes, the standard size, I'll use this one just because I don't have to keep refilling it. But for the minis, I use a smaller one because it lets me get closer to the liner to fill them as I go. So I'm gonna pour this in here, and this is what I do when I'm making the cupcakes for Savannah Cupcake, just like that. And then I lean down and I pour it right into the cupcake liner. About 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch from the top. You see that little space I'm leaving there? This is the one drawback to not using an ice cream scoop, because you're not guaranteed like you are with a scoop that they're all going to be the exact same size. You do have to eyeball it and just use your best judgment. With this recipe, if you overfill, they'll go all around the edges here and bake on the edges, and then they'll tear and it just won't be as pretty. So be careful not to overfill it. And if you're not sure exactly how much to do, just bake 2 or 3 at a time, and that'll give you an idea of how much you need to fill them up. But like I said, 1/2 inch to, I'd say about 1/2 inch from the top. So I'm gonna finish getting these all filled up and ready to go, and then I'll show you what it looks like before I put them in the oven, and then when they're done, and they're gonna be We took our cupcakes out of the oven. They're cooling. Now, while they're cooling, it's time to get started on the vanilla frosting. This is the vanilla frosting that I use for Savannah Cupcake, and now you get the recipe. All right, it's so easy. Let me show you what you're gonna need. I have 2 sticks of butter here. I have a little bit of cream cheese, not a lot of cream cheese, powdered sugar or confectioner's sugar, you might find it called, and also some vanilla. Now this is where you can change things up a little bit. If you don't have pure vanilla extract on hand, don't use it. I've not used it plenty of times, and it brings a little something into the flavor, but if it's missing, you really don't notice it that much because it's butter and sugar. Like, who cares? Right? You get butter and sugar together and it's as good as it gets. The cream cheese, it's not enough to make it an actual cream cheese frosting. By the way, if you want the recipe for my cream cheese frosting, you can click here. And that's where I'll have the link for you for my red velvet cupcakes with cream cheese frosting. This cream cheese, though, is basically just to help this frosting to set up a little bit. If you don't have cream cheese on hand, you can always use a little bit of shortening, or you can skip it all together. I think it just gives the frosting, though, a little bit of depth. The butter is room temperature, the cream cheese is room temperature as well. First, we're gonna put the butter and the cream cheese in the bowl. We're gonna give it a mix, let it get nice and fluffy. I like to let it go for about 2 minutes. We're gonna throw in the vanilla and then the cream cheese, and then you're done. I said it was easy, right? Now we're gonna toss in our confectioner's sugar. If the sugar you have is really lumpy, and you can just run your finger through it to see if you're feeling like big lumps in there, make sure you put it through a sieve or a sifter to get those lumps out, because you want your frosting to be nice and smooth and creamy and delicious. Frosting is done. I put the powdered sugar in the bowl and let it mix for about 20 seconds. Then gave the bowl a nice scrape, let it mix for about 10 seconds more, and that's it. You wanna let the mixer go for about 2 minutes before you put the powdered sugar in. Once the powdered sugar is in there, then you do minimal mixing. You don't need to let it go all crazy. All right, frosting, done. Now we're gonna put it in our piping bag. If you do not have a professional piping bag, this one cost me between 10 and 15 bucks. Coupler, which has 2 pieces to it. There's the inside of it. There's the outside of it. The purpose of a coupler is to hold this tip in place. This is a 1A tip. I definitely get into more detail whenever I do the red velvet cupcakes and the cream cheese frosting that I told you about. Click on that link, learn more about that. To fill up your bag, just put it all in here just like this. Like I was saying, if you don't have a piping bag like this, use a zippered baggie and just cut a small hole in the tip. And you can pipe your frosting on, and it'll be beautiful that way as well. And I've done that before too, and it sold the cupcakes. It works, believe me. All right, we got all of our frosting out of the bowl, in the bag. Once you get it in the bag, give the bag a little shake like this, and a little twist like this. There's your handle, and it's time to get piping. There are two different ways you can make sure your cupcakes are done when you take them out of the oven. The way I like to do it is I just give it a little tap like this, and if you see that it bounces back when you touch it, you know it's done. Or before I started baking cupcakes professionally, I would use the toothpick method. Put the toothpick in the center. If it comes out with only 1 or 2 crumbs on it, you know it's done. If it comes out wet, you know you need a few more minutes. Another little trick that I have, not necessarily cupcake related, but check this out. This is a chip and dip tray. Watch what I'm gonna do here. I'm gonna turn it into a platter. Turn the bowl upside down, and look at that. You got a nice little display there. That's so crafty. Not really. That's just a nice little way, nice little trick I learned when it comes to serving things. So you don't have to go out and buy something new. You probably have something on hand that you can already use. You can even use a bowl and a pretty plate. Flip it upside down, make sure it's sturdy when you set the plate on there, and you got a nice little serving platter. Super simple and super easy, and it turns out being really pretty, and nobody knows the wiser. All right, so we're just gonna put our cupcakes on our little platter here, just like this. I always like to get them in place before I frost them if they're gonna be on display to be served, if possible, if it's possible to do that. I like to have them all in place and ready to go, so then you don't have to move them back and forth with the frosting. If you happen to get a little of the frosting messed up during the process, or if it's your only choice to frost first and then set up, of course it's fine. But I like to do this if they're gonna be on display, which they are for you. Now we're gonna pipe our frosting onto the cupcakes. I'll start right here on this one on the edge. You start in the middle, you do a little circle, push down in the middle, kind of like a swipe. This is really easy. I can probably do this in record time. If you've never done this before, don't rush it. Practice on 1 or 2 cupcakes, and if you mess up, just scrape the frosting off and try again. Cupcakes are done, they're frosted, and they're gorgeous. For Tuxedo Cupcakes, obviously they're going to be black and white or dark brown and white. I like to use mini chocolate chips. If you want to use some sprinkles, you can definitely do that. I like to use these though. I like how they look, and I like the different texture that it gives you on the cupcakes. You got the fluffiness from the cake, you got the creaminess from the frosting, and then you have these little chocolate chips that are creamy in their own way that's different from the frosting. And it's really, really pretty. I love how it looks. I love a presentation that is simple, that's not too busy, and it's elegant. I love it, and people love it too. It gives you that little wow factor. People walk in the door and they see this and they go, ooh. That's how you know you hit a home run. Now, when you frost your cupcakes, don't wait to put the chocolate chips on. As soon as you frost them, put the chocolate chips on, otherwise they won't stick to the frosting like they need to do. Same thing with sprinkles, whatever you want to put on top, just do it as soon as you frost the cupcakes, because that little top layer on the frosting will start to dry, and then you'll go to put your sprinkles or your chocolate chips or whatever it is you want to put on, and honestly, they'll bounce right off. I've done it before, and it's annoying when it happens. Take it from me. All right, let's give this a little taste. Although, maybe you should bite it. Of all the cupcakes I made, but this chocolate cupcake, never, ever, ever got tired of it. So good. Tuxedo Cupcakes, please try them. They're yummy, they're delicious, and they're gorgeous. Thanks for checking in with me today. I'll see you next time.